The security guard's hand wrapped around my arm like a cold metal chain. His fingers dug into my suit jacket, the expensive one I bought just last week, and started pulling me backward. "Sir, you need to come with me. Now." I looked around the first-class cabin, confused. My seat was right there. C2A, the one printed clearly on my boarding pass. My leather briefcase sat in the overhead compartment. My jacket hung on the hook. Everything was where it should be. Except me, apparently. "There's been a mistake," the guard said. But his voice didn't sound like he thought it was a mistake at all. It sounded like he'd already decided I was a mistake. The other passengers stared. A woman in seat 3B clutched her purse tighter. An older man lowered his newspaper just enough to watch over the top. A businessman across the aisle shook his head slowly, like he'd seen this movie before and knew how it ended. "Wait," I said, trying to keep my voice calm even though my heart was pounding like a drum in my chest. "I paid for the seat. Here's my boarding pass." "We'll sort this out in the terminal," the guard interrupted. His partner, a taller man with cold blue eyes, stepped closer, blocking the aisle behind me. They were boxing me in. I felt my face getting hot. Not from anger. Not yet, but from something worse. Embarrassment. Shame. That terrible feeling when everyone's looking at you and you've done nothing wrong, but somehow you're the problem anyway. "Is there an issue with my ticket?" I asked, pulling out my phone. My hands were shaking a little, and I hated that they could probably see it. "Sir, don't make this difficult," the first guard said. His grip tightened. That's when I heard her. "Oh, thank goodness." A woman's voice rang out from somewhere behind me. "There he is. That's him." I turned my head as much as I could with the guard, still holding my arm. A blonde woman, in a bright pink tracksuit, was pointing at me from 5 rows back in economy. Her face was red, and she looked upset. No, more than upset. She looked scared. "That's the man," she said louder. He was standing over my seat, looking through my bag. I saw him. My stomach dropped like an elevator with cut cables. "What? No, I haven't been back there," I stammered. I came straight to my seat. "I haven't moved since "Ma'am, we've got him," the second guard said to her, his voice gentle in a way it hadn't been with me. "Did he take anything?" I don't know yet," she said, her voice trembling. "I haven't checked everything. But I saw him. I definitely saw him." The cabin erupted in whispers. I could feel them spreading like fire, passenger to passenger, row to row. The black guy in first class. He was stealing. He doesn't belong here. I knew something was wrong. "This is insane," I said, my voice coming out louder than I meant it to. "I haven't left my seat. Check the cameras. Someone must have seen." "Sir, lower your voice," the first guard commanded. "You're causing a disturbance." I was causing a disturbance. Not the woman accusing me of a crime I didn't commit. Not the guards manhandling me in front of dozens of witnesses. Me. A flight attendant appeared. The same one who'd smiled at me 20 minutes ago when I boarded, who'd offer me champagne and call me sir in that professional way. Now her smile was gone. Now she looked at me like I might explode. "Is everything all right here?" she asked the guards, not me. "We're removing this passenger," the taller guard said. "There's been an accusation of theft." "I didn't steal anything." I protested. "This is racial profiling. You can't just—" "Sir, if you don't comply, we'll have no choice but to call the police," the flight attendant said. Her voice had ice in it now. "They can meet the plane, or you can come quietly now. Your choice." My choice. As if I had any choice at all. I thought about fighting it. I thought about demanding to speak to a supervisor, about standing my ground, about making them drag me off this plane in front of everyone. I thought about my rights, about lawyers, about justice. But then I saw the way everyone was looking at me, the fear in their eyes, the disgust, the satisfaction on some faces, like they'd known all along that someone like me didn't belong in first class. And I thought about the videos, the viral videos of people who fought back, who refused to leave, who stood up for themselves. I thought about how those videos always ended, with someone on the ground with handcuffs, with blood sometimes, with their lives ruined even when they'd done nothing wrong. So I took a breath and said the words that burned my throat coming out. "Fine, I'll go." The guard's grip loosened slightly, surprised I'd given in so easily. I reached up to get my briefcase, the one with my laptop, my files, my entire life inside it. "Leave it," the taller guard barked. "We need to search it first." "That's my property." "Leave it, or we'll add refusing to comply with crew member instructions to the complaint." I left it. They walked me down the aisle like a criminal. Every eye followed me. Every whisper cut me. The woman in pink had tears in her eyes now, playing the victim perfectly. Other passengers patted her shoulder as I passed, comforting her for the trauma I'd supposedly caused. We reached the airplane door. The jetway stretched ahead like a tunnel. I turned back one last time and saw my empty seat. The one I'd paid $2,000 for, the one I'd earned the right to sit in. That's when I made a decision. A crazy, impossible, ridiculous decision. But first, they'd have to let me go. The guards escorted me through the jetway, their hands still on my arms like I might bolt at any second. We emerged into the terminal, and that's when everything changed. My phone started buzzing, not just once or twice, but constantly, like a swarm of bees had gotten trapped in my pocket. Messages, dozens of them, then dozens more. I glanced at the screen as one of the guards finally released my arm. The first message made my heart stop. "Urgent. Federal Reserve announcement in 3 minutes. Dollar collapse imminent. Execute Plan Omega now." The second message was from my head trader. "Boss, you need to see this. Now. Call me immediately." And the third message, the one that made everything else disappear, was from my partner. "The airline stock just crashed. Something big happened. We can move if you give the word in the next 10 minutes. This is the opportunity we've been waiting for." I looked up at the guards, who were talking to airport police now, explaining the situation. They thought they had time. They thought this was a simple case of a thief in first class. They had no idea who I was. They had no idea what they'd just done. And in 15 minutes, when I walked back through this terminal, everything, absolutely everything, would be different. But first, I needed to make a phone call. My fingers were shaking as I pulled out my phone, but not from fear anymore, from something else. Something that felt like electricity running through my veins. The guards were still talking to the airport police, filling out forms, probably writing up their report about the suspicious man they'd heroically removed from first class. They thought they had all the time in the world. They had no idea the clock was ticking. I stepped away from them, just a few feet, but enough to make the call I needed to make. One guard glanced at me, but I held up my phone and said, "My lawyer," in a tired voice. He nodded and went back to his paperwork. I didn't call my lawyer. I called Marcus. He picked up on the first ring. "Boss, tell me you saw the news." "I saw it," I said quietly, turning my back to the guards. "How bad is it?" The Federal Reserve just announced emergency measures. 3 major banks are on the edge. The stock market is hemorrhaging. Airlines are getting destroyed. People think travel's going to tank. Transglobal Airways is down 42% in the last 8 minutes. Transglobal Airways, the airline whose plane I'd just been dragged off of. My mind started calculating automatically. It's what I did, what I'd always done, even as a kid counting pennies in my piggy bank. Numbers were my language. Money was my game. 42%. I repeated, "What's their market cap now?" I heard keyboard clicks on Marcus's end. Currently sitting at about 1.8 billion. "Boss, this is panic selling. The fundamentals haven't changed. People will still fly. The economy will recover. This is an overreaction, but everyone's scared. I finished. And scared people make stupid decisions." Exactly. If someone came in with a major buy right now, I'm talking a real show of confidence, they could pick up shares at a 70% discount from last week's prices. But you need serious capital, and you need to move fast. We're talking a 30-minute window, maybe less, before the big institutional investors realize this is a buying opportunity. I looked at the guards, at the airport police, At the terminal around me, the terminal owned by Transglobal Airways, at gate after gate with their logo plastered everywhere. How much do we have liquid? I asked. Marcus paused. In immediately accessible funds? About 2.1 billion. But boss, if we dump everything into one play, how much would we need for controlling interest? Another pause, longer this time. You're not serious. Marcus, how much? More keyboard clicks. I could practically hear his brain working through the math. At current prices, with a stock that's deflated, if we acquired 51% of outstanding shares, we'd need roughly 920 million. Maybe a bit more depending on how fast the price moves when we start buying. So we have enough. Technically, yes, but boss, what's going on? Why are you asking about Transglobal specifically? We've never even looked at airlines before. You always said they were terrible investments, high costs, low margins, too many variables. I watched as a woman in the pink tracksuit came down the jetway, flanked by flight attendants who were treating her like royalty. She was still crying, still playing her part perfectly. She glanced at me with fake fear in her eyes, then hurried past toward the terminal. Something in my chest tightened, then loosened, then turned into something cold and hard. I changed my mind about airlines. I said, start buying. Every share you can get. Move through our shell companies. I don't want anyone knowing it's us until we're ready to announce. Use the Cayman accounts. The Singapore holdings, everything. I want 51% of Transglobal Airways, and I want it in the next 20 minutes. Boss, this is insane. This is gambling, not investing. If the market doesn't recover, if airlines stay down, they won't. People always need to fly. Businesses need to travel. This is temporary panic, and you know it. The only question is whether we're brave enough to act while everyone else is frozen. I heard him take a deep breath. Okay, I'm doing it. But when this is over, you're going to tell me what's really going on. Deal. Oh, and Marcus? One more thing. Yeah. When we hit 51%, I want you to call the CEO of Transglobal. What's his name? Harold Brennan. He's been CEO for 12 years. Perfect. Call Mr. Brennan and tell him that the company just changed ownership. Tell him to meet me at his corporate headquarters in... I checked my watch. 1 hour. Tell him to bring his head of security, his chief operating officer, and his director of customer service. His director of customer service? You heard me. I could hear the smile in Marcus's voice now. He was starting to understand. Boss, what did they do to you? They made a mistake, Marcus. A very expensive mistake. Now start buying. I hung up and turned back to the guards. They were finally finishing their paperwork. The airport police officer, a middle-aged man with gray hair and tired eyes, walked over to me. Sir, I'm Officer Davidson. I need to ask you a few questions about what happened on the aircraft. Of course, I said, my voice calm now. Steady. The shaking was gone. But first, can I ask you something? He looked surprised but nodded. Sure. Do you think I did it? Do you think I was going through that woman's bag? Officer Davidson studied my face for a long moment. I could see him really looking at me for the first time. Not just seeing a suspect, but seeing a person, a man in a $3,000 suit, a man who spoke clearly and calmly, a man who didn't look like someone who needed to steal from tourists in coach. Honestly, he said quietly, no, I don't. I've been doing this job for 23 years, and something about this doesn't add up. But she filed a complaint, and we have to follow procedure. I understand, I said. So what happens now? Well, we need to interview both of you separately. Check the security footage if there is any and... My phone buzzed. I glanced down. Marcus. Past 30% ownership. Stock starting to tick up. Other buyers noticing. Need to move faster. Officer Davidson, I said, how long will this take? I have an important business meeting in about 45 minutes. One of the guards, the one who grabbed my arm first, laughed. Actually laughed. You're not going to any meeting, pal. You're lucky if you're not going to jail. I looked at him. Really looked at him. I memorized his face. His name tag said Porter. Officer Porter, I said softly. What's your annual salary? If you don't mind me asking. He blinked, confused by the question. What? That's none of your. About 40,000? I continued. Maybe 45 with overtime? That's what security guards at airports make, I believe. His face reddened. Listen here. I make that in a day, I said, my voice still quiet but with steel underneath. A bad day. And in about 10 minutes, I'm going to make more money than you'll see in your entire life. So when I tell you I have an important business meeting, I'm not asking permission. I'm informing you of a fact. The terminal went quiet. Even Officer Davidson was staring at me now. Porter stepped forward, his hand moving toward his belt. Are you threatening me? No, I said. I'm educating you. There's a difference. My phone buzzed again. Marcus. 41% ownership. Brennan's office is trying to call us. Stock exchange flagged the unusual activity. We're about to make the news. I smiled. Officer Davidson's radio crackled to life. A voice came through, urgent, confused. Davidson, we're getting calls from Trans Global Corporate. Something about a hostile takeover? They're asking about an incident with a passenger. Do you have... Davidson's eyes went wide. He looked at me, then at his radio, then back at me. What's your name, sir? He asked slowly. I told him. I watched the color drain from his face as recognition hit. He'd heard my name before. Everyone in finance had. Everyone who read the business section. Everyone who paid attention to the people who moved markets and made millions. Oh my God, he whispered. Porter looked confused. What? Who is he? But Davidson wasn't listening. He was already pulling out his phone, probably looking me up, confirming what he already knew in his gut. The woman in pink was coming back now, escorted by a flight attendant. She was ready to give her statement, ready to play the victim one more time. She had no idea what was coming. None of them did. My phone buzzed one more time. Marcus. 51.3% ownership confirmed. You own Trans Global Airways. What now, boss? I looked up at Porter, at Davidson, at the flight attendant, at the woman in pink who'd lied about me. I looked at the Trans Global Airways logo on the wall behind them. My logo now. Now. I said out loud, though I was really talking to myself, now we have a conversation about customer service. Officer Davidson was staring at his phone screen like it might explode. His fingers scrolled and scrolled, reading article after article. I could see the headlines even from where I stood. Mystery investor acquires major stake in Trans Global Airways. Stock market shock. Trans Global bought during crash. Breaking. Airline giant changes hands in minutes. Porter was looking over his shoulder now, confused. What's going on? Who is this guy? Davidson looked up at me with something like fear in his eyes. Not the kind of fear you have of a criminal. The kind you have when you realize you made a terrible, career-ending mistake. Davidson swallowed hard. He's one of the richest investors in the country. I'm the new owner of Trans Global Airways, I said simply. As of about 3 minutes ago, the flight attendant's face went white. Actually white, like someone had painted over her tan with chalk. Porter laughed again, but it sounded nervous this time. Uncertain. That's impossible. You can't just buy an airline in 15 minutes? I finished. You'd be surprised what you can do with enough money and the right timing. The stock market crashed. Your airline shares became very, very cheap. I had the cash. I made the purchase. It's actually quite simple. The woman in pink was looking around now, sensing something had changed, but not understanding what. Excuse me? I was told I could give my statement about what this man did. I turned to face her fully for the first time. She was younger than I thought. Maybe 30, with too much makeup and eyes that darted around like a bird looking for crumbs. Yes, I said. Let's talk about what I did. You said you saw me going through your bag. In economy class. Row 24, I believe. She nodded quickly. Yes. You were hunched over my seat and your hand was in my bag. And what was I wearing? She blinked. What? What was I wearing when you saw me? Describe it. You had on. She looked at what I was wearing now. My dark blue suit, my white shirt, my red tie. That, what you're wearing now. I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Officer Davidson, could you pull up the security footage from gate 17? The gate where I boarded. I'd like to see what time I got on that plane. Davidson nodded slowly and spoke into his radio. Within a minute, another officer arrived with a tablet. They pulled up the footage. There I was, clear as day, walking down the jetway at 2:47 p.m. I walked straight onto the plane. The timestamp kept rolling, 2:48, 2:49, 2:50. I never came back out. Now, I said, can we see footage from the economy section, particularly around row 24? The plane cameras only cover the doors in first class. The flight attendant said quietly. She wasn't looking at me anymore, for security reasons. Interesting, I said. So there's no way to prove I was ever in economy class. But there's footage showing I went straight to my seat and stayed there. The woman in pink's face was getting red now. But I saw someone was going through your bag. I agreed. I believe you. But it wasn't me, which means either you lie about who it was, or you genuinely mistook someone else for me. I let that hang in the air for a moment. Let everyone think about what that meant. Porter shifted uncomfortably. Look, even if there was a misunderstanding about the theft. There was no misunderstanding. I interrupted. There was a lie. Or at best, a very convenient mistake. Tell me something. Officer Porter, when you got the call about a man stealing from passengers, what description were you given? He glanced at the flight attendant. She was staring at the floor now. Answer the question. Officer Davidson said to Porter. His voice had changed. He was a real cop now, looking for truth instead of just following orders. Porter cleared his throat. We were told there was a suspicious man in first class, that he didn't belong there, that a passenger had seen him going through bags and coach. And what else? I pressed. That's it. Really? You didn't get a description? Height? Age? Clothing? Anything. Porter's silence was all the answer I needed. I turned to the flight attendant. Her name tag said Jennifer. She still wouldn't look at me. Jennifer, I said gently, who called security on me? I don't. Who? Called. Security. She looked up and I saw tears in her eyes. Real ones, not like the fake ones from the woman in pink. The captain. He said there was a complaint about a passenger in first class who seemed like he didn't belong there. I finished. Because of what I looked like. Not because of anything I did. Not because I was acting suspicious. Because of the color of my skin. Jennifer nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks now. I'm so sorry. I didn't think. I should have questioned it, but the captain said... The captain? I repeated. And where's the captain now? Still on the plane, she whispered, preparing for departure. My phone buzzed. I looked down. Marcus. Brennan is freaking out. Wants to know your demands. Media is going crazy. Stock is recovering. Up to 31% from the bottom. We're already up 280 million on paper. I typed back. Tell Brennan I'll see him in 30 minutes. And tell him to ground flight 447, the one at gate 17. Nobody takes off until I say so. I looked back at the group. Officer Davidson was watching me carefully. Porter looked sick. Jennifer was crying quietly. And the woman in pink was starting to edge backward, realizing maybe her little lie had become a much bigger problem. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice calm but loud enough for everyone to hear. Officer Davidson, I want a full investigation into this incident. I want to know who made the first call to security. I want to know if there was ever any real complaint about theft, or if someone just didn't like seeing a black man in first class. Davidson nodded. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Jennifer, you're going to take me back to that plane. I want to speak to the captain, face to face. She wiped her eyes. Sir, the plane is about to... The plane isn't going anywhere, I said. I own it. And right now, I want to have a conversation with a man who decided I was a criminal without ever meeting me. Porter finally found his voice again. Now, wait a minute. You can't just what? I turned to face him. Can't defend myself when I'm falsely accused? Can't ask questions when I'm humiliated in front of 100 people? Can't demand answers when my civil rights are violated? He had no answer for that. I looked at the woman in pink. She was backing away faster now, trying to disappear into the crowd that had gathered to watch this drama unfold. "Ma'am," I called out, "don't leave. Officer Davidson is going to want your statement. Your real statement. About what you actually saw." She froze. "Because here's the thing," I continued, walking toward her slowly. "If you made an honest mistake, if you really thought you saw me when it was someone else, then that's unfortunate, but it's not a crime. People make mistakes." I stopped a few feet from her, close enough to see the panic in her eyes. "But if you lied," I said softly, "if you saw someone else and decided to blame the black guy in first class because you thought it would be easy, because you thought no one would question you, because you thought people would automatically believe you over me, well, that's something different. That's filing a false police report. That's defamation. That's a crime." Her mouth opened and closed like a fish. No words came out. "So which is it?" I asked. "Honest mistake or deliberate lie?" Officer Davidson stepped forward with his notepad. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to answer that question. And I should inform you that making a false report to law enforcement is a misdemeanor that carries." "It wasn't him," she burst out. "Okay? It wasn't him. I saw someone go with the bags. Someone did, I swear, but it was a different guy. Younger, in a black hoodie. But by the time I got the flight attendant's attention, he was gone, and then I saw." She stopped, realizing she was about to say the quiet part out loud. "You saw me," I finished for her. "The black guy who didn't belong in first class. And you thought, why not? Close enough, right? Who's going to question me?" I didn't mean it wasn't about... "It's always about that," I said quietly, "even when people say it isn't. Especially when people say it isn't." The terminal was completely silent now. Dozens of people had stopped to watch. Some were recording on their phones. I could already imagine the headlines tomorrow. Good. Let them watch. Let them record. Let the whole world see. Jennifer touched my arm hesitantly. "Sir, if you still want to speak to the captain..." I nodded. "I do. Lead the way." We started walking back toward Gate 17. Officer Davidson came with us, along with Porter, who looked like he wished he'd called in sick today. The crowd parted as we moved through, people whispering and pointing. As we walked down the jetway, my phone buzzed one more time. "Marcus, boss, we've got a problem. Brennan is on the news right now. He's claiming the takeover is illegal. He's calling for an emergency board meeting. He's fighting back." I smiled as we approached the airplane door. "Let him fight." I typed back. I'm about to give him something else to worry about. The plane was still full. All those passengers still in their seats, wondering why they hadn't taken off yet. I could see them through the door. Businessmen checking their watches. Families with restless kids. The businessman from seat 3B who'd watched them drag me away. Jennifer stepped onto the plane first. "Captain Morris, we need you to come to the door, please." I heard his voice before I saw him. Confident, authoritative, used to being in charge. "We're already delayed. This better be important." Then he appeared in the doorway. He was older than I expected, maybe 60, with gray hair and cold eyes. The kind of eyes that had made a million judgments over a long career and never questioned any of them. He saw me and stopped dead. "You," he said. "Me?" I agreed. "I believe we need to have a conversation, Captain Morris, about your passenger screening procedures, about your assumptions, and about who owns this airplane you're standing in." His face went from confident to confused to angry in about 3 seconds. "I don't know what you think you're doing, but..." "What I'm doing," I interrupted, "is standing on my property. This is my plane now, my airline, and you work for me. So when I say we need to talk, Captain, we're going to talk." Behind him, I could see the passengers starting to realize something was happening. starting to understand that the man they watched get dragged off in shame was now standing in the doorway like he owned the place. Because I did. The captain's face turned red. This is outrageous. I'm calling corporate. I'm calling the union. You can't just... Corporate works for me now, I said calmly. Call them if you want. They'll confirm it. As for the union, they can file any grievance they like. After we have our conversation. I stepped onto the plane. Every eye in first class turned to me. I smiled at them, the same people who'd watched me get removed. The woman who clutched her purse. The man with his newspaper. The businessman who'd shaken his head. Good afternoon, everyone, I said, my voice carrying to the cabin. I apologize for the delay, but I have an important announcement to make, and I wanted you all to hear it first. I stood in the aisle of first class, looking at all the faces that had watched me get dragged away like a criminal. Some of them looked confused now. Others looked uncomfortable. A few looked scared. Good. Captain Morris was behind me, sputtering. You can't just... This is my aircraft. I'm in command here. I turned to face him. Officer Davidson, could you please explain to the captain what's happened in the last 20 minutes? Davidson stepped forward, holding up his phone with the news articles still displayed. Sir, this man has acquired controlling ownership of Transglobal Airways. As of approximately 15 minutes ago, he owns 51% of the company's stock. Legally, that makes me your boss. I finished. Well, technically your boss's boss, but the chain of command leads back to me now. The color drained from Captain Morris's face. He grabbed the phone from Davidson and stared at the screen, scrolling frantically. I watched his reality sink in, watched as he realized what he'd done, who he'd done it to. This can't be real, he whispered. This is some kind of trick. Call your headquarters, I said. Ask for Harold Brennan. I believe he's waiting to hear from you anyway. Morris stumbled back into the cockpit. I could hear him on the radio, his voice shaking. Ground control, this is Flight 447. I need to speak to corporate immediately. Emergency situation. Yes, I'll hold. While he made his call, I turned back to passengers. They were all staring at me with wide eyes now. The cabin was so quiet I could hear the air conditioning humming. My name is Marcus Johnson, I said. I kept my real name out of this story until now. But it was time. Some of you may have heard of me. Most of you probably haven't. I'm an investor. I buy companies, fix them, and make them better. 20 minutes ago, I bought this airline. A woman in seat 4A raised her hand slightly, like she was in school. You bought the whole airline? In 20 minutes? Yes, ma'am. The stock market crashed today. Your airline shares became very cheap very fast. I had the money ready. I made the purchase. It's actually not as complicated as people think, just expensive. But why? Asked the businessman in 3B. Why this airline? Why right now? I smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. That's a very good question, sir. You see, about 30 minutes ago, I was sitting in that seat right there. I pointed to seat 2A, still empty. I was minding my own business. I had paid for my ticket. Everything was proper and correct. I paused, letting them remember. Then security came. They grabbed my arm. They accused me of theft based on the word of a passenger, who later admitted she was lying. They dragged me off this plane in front of all of you. Do you remember that? Heads nodded slowly. People were looking down now, ashamed. Do you remember watching? I continued, my voice getting quieter, which somehow made it sound louder. Do you remember assuming I must have done something wrong? Because why else would they remove me, right? The security guards must have had a good reason. The captain must have had a good reason. The woman who clutched her purse was crying now, actual tears running down her face. The only reason, I said, was that I didn't look like I belonged in first class. That's it. That's the whole reason. Someone saw a black man in an expensive seat and decided there must be a mistake. Sir, The businessman started, but I held up my hand. I'm not finished. You see, I had a choice when they dragged me off this plane. I could have fought back. I could have screamed and yelled about my rights. I could have made them physically remove me. And do you know what would have happened if I did that? No one answered. There would have been videos. I would have been on the news, but not as a victim, as a threat, as an angry black man causing problems on a plane. My life would have been destroyed, even though I did nothing wrong. So instead, I went quietly. I let them humiliate me. I let them win. Captain Morris stumbled out of the cockpit. His face was gray now. I just spoke to Mr. Brennan. He confirmed. He said He couldn't finish the sentence. He confirmed that I own this airline now. I said, and do you want to know the interesting part, Captain? The part that makes this whole day worth it. I walked down the aisle slowly, looking at each passenger as I passed. They could meet my eyes. If you had just let me fly, if you had just minded your own business and let me sit in the seat I paid for, I would have landed in Chicago tonight, gone to my meeting, and never thought about Transglobal Airways again. Your company would still be owned by the same board of directors. Mr. Brennan would still be CEO. Everything would be exactly the same. I reached the back of first class and turned around. But you didn't let me fly. You humiliated me. You treated me like a criminal. And that decision, that one stupid, racist decision, just cost your old bosses about $2 billion. The silence in the cabin was deafening. Now, I said, walking back toward the front, let's talk about what happens next. Captain Morris, you're grounded. Effective immediately. You'll be on paid administrative leave while we investigate exactly what happened today and why you decided to call security on a passenger who was doing nothing wrong. Morris's mouth opened and closed. You can't. I have a union. And your union will ensure you're treated fairly during the investigation. I said, I'm not firing you. Not yet. But you're not flying my planes until I know whether this was a one-time mistake or a pattern of behavior. Officer Davidson, I assume you can make sure the captain doesn't leave until we completed our interviews. Davidson nodded. Yes, sir. I turned to Jennifer, the flight attendant who'd been crying earlier. She looked terrified now. Jennifer, how long have you worked for Transglobal? 8 years, she whispered. And in those 8 years, how many times have you seen passengers removed from first class? She thought about it. Maybe a dozen times. How many of those passengers were black? Her face crumpled. Most of them. Almost all of them. And did you ever question it? Ever wonder if maybe, just maybe, there was a pattern? She shook her head, tears flowing freely now. I'm so sorry. I should have said something. But the captain always said, we were trained to listen to the captain. I understand, I said, and I meant it. You were following orders. You were doing what you were trained to do. But that's going to change now, because I'm about to retrain everyone in this company. My phone buzzed. I glanced at it. Marcus. Brennan is on TV again. He's claiming you're trying to destroy the company. Says you're unqualified to run an airline. Playing the race car in reverse. Saying you only bought it because of what happened. Media eating it up. I smiled and typed back. Let him talk. I'll respond soon. How's the stock? Marcus. Up 47% from the bottom. You're up $340 million already. Institutional investors are piling in now. They love the drama. I looked up at the passengers again. Some of them had their phones out, recording. Perfect. I'm going to make an announcement, I said. And I want all of you to hear it first, before the media, before the board, before anyone else. You're going to be witnesses to history. I pulled out my phone and opened the camera app, set it to video, propped it up on one of the first-class seats so it could record me. My name is Marcus Johnson, I said to the camera, and as of today, I am the majority owner of Transglobal Airways. I acquired this airline under unusual circumstances that I'm about to explain to the world. Behind me, I could hear passengers whispering, but I ignored them and kept talking to the camera. Approximately 45 minutes ago, I was removed from Flight 447 based on a false accusation of theft. I was grabbed by security guards, accused in front of hundreds of passengers, and escorted off the aircraft I had paid to fly on. The reason? Not because I had done anything wrong. Not because I was acting suspicious. but because I was a black man sitting in first class, and someone decided I didn't belong there. I paused, letting that sink in for the viewers who would watch this later. Now, I could have sued. I could have called my lawyers, filed complaints with the FAA, demanded investigations. That's what most people do. But I'm not most people. Instead, I did something different. I bought the airline. I heard gas from the passengers behind me. In the 15 minutes after I was removed from this plane, I acquired 51% of Transglobal Airways stock. The market had crashed. The timing was perfect. And now, I own the company that humiliated me. I leaned closer to the camera. So, here's what's going to happen next. First, there will be a full investigation into today's incident. Every person involved will be interviewed. Every policy will be reviewed. And if we find that this was not an isolated incident, if we find a pattern of discrimination, then heads will roll. I could hear Captain Morris breathing heavily behind me, but I kept going. Second, I'm implementing a new training program for all Transglobal employees. It's going to focus on bias, on assumptions, on treating every passenger with respect regardless of what they look like. It's going to be mandatory. It's going to be comprehensive. And it's going to change the culture of this airline from the top down. I stood up straighter. Third, I'm setting up a compensation fund for passengers who have been discriminated against on Transglobal flights. If you've been removed unfairly, if you've been treated differently because of your race, if you've been humiliated like I was, come forward. Tell your story. We'll investigate. And if your claim is valid, we'll compensate you. Because this stops now. The cabin was absolutely silent except for my voice. Some people are going to say I'm being vindictive. They're going to say I'm unqualified to run an airline. They're going to say I only bought this company for revenge. And you know what? They're partially right. I am angry. I am upset. What happened to me today was wrong, and I'm not going to pretend it wasn't. I picked up my phone, holding it close now. But here's the thing those people don't understand. I didn't buy this airline to destroy it. I bought it to fix it. Because what happened to me today happens to people every single day. Black people, brown people, poor people. People who don't fit someone's narrow idea of what belongs in first class. And I have the money and the power to actually do something about it. I stopped recording and looked around at the passengers. Every single one of them was staring at me with expressions ranging from shock to awe to shame. Now, I said, slipping my phone back into my pocket. This flight is canceled. You'll all be rebooked on the next available flight. First class, no charge. Consider it an apology from a new management. The woman in 4A raised her hand again. Mr. Johnson, can I ask you something? Of course. Are you really going to fix things? Or is this just for show? I looked at her for a long moment. She seemed genuinely curious, not hostile. Ma'am, I just spent nearly $1 billion to buy this airline. That's not for show. That's commitment. And by the time I'm done, Transglobal Airways is going to be the most inclusive, most respectful, most passenger-focused airline in America. Not because it's good publicity, though it will be, but because it's the right thing to do. Officer Davidson's radio crackled again. Davidson, we've got news crews arriving at the terminal. They're asking about the Transglobal situation. What should we tell them? I looked at Davidson. Tell them I'll give a press conference in 30 minutes. Right here at Gate 17. In the meantime, I have one more thing to do. What's that, sir? He asked. I turned to Captain Morris. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in the last half hour. Captain, I said quietly, I need you to understand something. What happened today wasn't just wrong, it was expensive. It cost your old employers billions. It cost you your job, at least temporarily. It cost this airline its reputation. All because you made an assumption based on the color of my skin. He nodded slowly, unable to speak. I want you to think about that during your suspension. Think about how one moment of bias can change everything. Think about all the other passengers you might have treated this way. Think about whether this is really who you want to be. I'm sorry, he whispered. I didn't mean I wasn't trying to. I know, I said. That's the problem. You didn't mean to be racist. You weren't trying to be discriminatory. It just happened naturally, automatically, without you even thinking about it. That's what makes it so dangerous. I walked past him, off the plane, back into the jetway. Jennifer followed me, along with Officer Davidson and the other officers. As we walked back into the terminal, I could see the crowd had grown massive. Hundreds of people were gathered around Gate 17, all holding up phones, all recording. News cameras were being set up. Reporters were shouting questions. My phone rang. It was Marcus. "Boss, you're trending worldwide. The video is everywhere. Brennan just resigned." He saw the writing on the wall. "The board is asking for an emergency meeting with you, and the stock is up 63% from the bottom. You just made $500 million in profit." I smiled. "Good. Set up the board meeting for tomorrow morning." And Marcus, "Yeah, start looking into every other airline in America. I want to know which ones have similar problems. Because if I can fix one airline, I can fix them all." I could hear the excitement in his voice. "You're not stopping with Transglobal?" "Not even close," I said. Today was just the beginning. I hung up and turned to face the cameras. The reporters surged forward, shouting questions all at once. "Mr. Johnson, is it true you bought the airline after being discriminated against? Are you planning to fire everyone involved? What message are you sending to other companies? Is this about revenge or justice?" I held up my hand, and slowly the crowd quieted down. "I'll answer all your questions," I said. "But first, I want to say something to every person of color who's ever been made to feel like they don't belong. To everyone who's been followed in stores, questioned in airports, removed from places they had every right to be." I paused, making sure every camera was focused on me. "Today we fought back, and we won." The press conference lasted 45 minutes. Reporters threw every question they could think of at me, and I answered each one carefully, honestly. I talked about what happened on the plane. I talked about the pattern of discrimination in the airline industry. I talked about my plans to change Transglobal from the inside out. But the question I remember most came from a young black woman reporter in the back. She couldn't have been more than 25, and her hand shook a little as she held up her microphone. "Mr. Johnson," she said, her voice quiet first, then stronger. "What would you say to people who think you only succeeded because you got lucky, that the market crash happened at exactly the right time?" I looked at her for a long moment. "I'd say they're half right. I did get lucky with the timing. But luck only matters if you're prepared to use it. I've spent 20 years building wealth, studying markets, making smart investments. When that moment came, I had the knowledge, the resources, and the courage to act. Luck gave me the opportunity. Preparation let me seize it." She smiled, and I saw something shift in her eyes. Hope, maybe, or recognition that success wasn't just about chance. It was about being ready when your moment arrived. After the press conference, Officer Davidson pulled me aside. "Mr. Johnson, we've completed our preliminary investigation. The woman in pink, her name is Sandra Mitchell, admitted that she deliberately misidentified you. She saw someone else going through bags, got scared, and when she saw you, she made a choice." "What kind of choice?" I asked, though I already knew. She said, and I quote, "I saw him in first class and thought he looked suspicious. He seemed like he'd be easier to identify than the white guy in a hoodie who actually did it." Davidson shook his head in disgust. "She's being charged with filing a false police report and defamation. The district attorney wants to make an example of her." "No," I said. Davidson blinked. "No. Drop the charges. Or at least reduce them to something that won't destroy her life. Community service. Mandatory bias training. Something that teaches instead of just punishes. But, sir, she lied about you. She tried to get you arrested." "I know, and she'll have to live with that. She'll see my face on the news and remember what her lie cost. Not just me, but herself. That's punishment enough. I don't need revenge on her. I need change." Davidson nodded slowly. "You're a better man than most, Mr. Johnson." "No," I said. "I'm just tired of the cycle. Hurt people hurt people. I want to break the cycle, not continue it. My phone buzzed. Marcus again. Marcus. Board meeting set for 9 a.m. tomorrow. Brennan's lawyers want to negotiate his severance package. And boss, you need to see this. He'd sent a link to a video. I clicked it. It was footage from inside the plane, recorded by one of the passengers. But this wasn't my announcement. This was from earlier, from when I'd first been pulled from my seat. The angle showed everything clearly. Me sitting peacefully, reading something on my phone. The security guards approaching. The way I complied with every instruction. And then it showed the other passengers. The woman clutching her purse. The man with the newspaper, shaking his head. The businessman looking away, unwilling to get involved. The faces of people who'd assumed I was guilty just by looking at me. The video had 15 million views already. The comments were flooding in, some supportive, some angry, some still trying to justify what had happened. But the truth was out there now, undeniable and recorded. I closed the video and looked around the terminal. News crews were packing up their equipment. The crowd was slowly dispersing. Officer Davidson was finishing his paperwork. Everything was winding down, except for one person. Jennifer, the flight attendant, was sitting alone on a bench near the gate. Her head was in her hands, and her shoulders were shaking. She was crying. I walked over and sat down next to her. She jumped when she noticed me, wiping her eyes quickly. Mr. Johnson, I'm so sorry. I should go. I shouldn't even be here. It's okay, I said gently. Talk to me. What's wrong? What's wrong? She laughed bitterly. I helped them do that to you. I called security. I stood there and watched them drag you off, and I didn't say anything. I didn't question it. I just went along with it. You were following orders, I said. That's what you were trained to do. That's not good enough. Her voice cracked. I knew something felt off. When the captain first called security, something in my gut said this was wrong. But I ignored it because questioning authority is hard. I finished. Because standing up means risking your job. Because it's easier to assume the people in charge know what they're doing. She nodded miserably. I have student loans. I have rent. I can't afford to lose this job. But after today, I don't know if I can keep doing it. Not if it means being part of something like this. I thought about her words carefully before I responded. Jennifer, how would you like to help me change things? She looked up, confused. What? I meant what I said on that plane. I'm going to retrain everyone in this company. But I can't do it alone. I need people who understand what went wrong today. People who were there, who saw it happen, who felt that voice in their gut telling them something wasn't right. You want me to help train people? After what I did. Especially after what you did. I said, you know what it feels like to go along with something wrong. You know the excuses people make. You know how easy it is to ignore your conscience when money and authority are involved. That makes you the perfect person to teach others not to make the same mistake. She stared at me like I was speaking another language. You're not firing me? No, but I am promoting you. Effective immediately. You're my new director of passenger experience and employee training. Your job is to make sure what happened to me never happens to anyone else on my airline. Can you do that? Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks, but these were different. Yes, I can do that. I swear to you, I know you will, I said, standing up. Report to headquarters tomorrow at 10. We have a lot of work to do. As I walked away, my phone rang again. This time it wasn't Marcus. It was a number I didn't recognize with a Washington, D.C. area code. I answered, Marcus Johnson. Mr. Johnson, this is Congresswoman Patricia Hayes. I chair the House Transportation Committee. I've been watching the news about what happened to you today, and I'd like to invite you to testify before Congress about discrimination in the airline industry. I smiled. Congresswoman, I'd be honored. When were you thinking? As soon as possible. What happened to you today? It's been happening for years. We've had reports, complaints, lawsuits. But nothing changes because the airlines are too powerful, and the people being discriminated against don't have the resources to fight back. But you do. Yes, ma'am, I do. and I intend to use every resource I have. We talked for another 10 minutes about dates, logistics, what kind of testimony would be most effective. By the time I hung up, I had a date. 3 weeks from today, I'd be sitting in front of Congress, telling my story to the whole nation. But first, I had a company to run. The next morning, I walked into Transglobal Airways headquarters at exactly 8:45 a.m. The building was buzzing with nervous energy. Employees whispered in hallways. Executives rushed to meetings. Everyone knew the world had changed overnight, but no one knew exactly what that meant for them. Marcus met me in the lobby. "Boss, they're all waiting in the boardroom. 14 board members, the CFO, the COO, and about 6 lawyers. They looked terrified." "Good," I said. "Fear is honest. Fear means they're taking this seriously." We rode the elevator to the top floor in silence. When the doors opened, I could see the boardroom through glass walls. Exactly as Marcus had said, men and women in expensive suits, sitting around a massive table, their faces grave. I walked in, and the room fell silent. "Good morning," I said, taking the empty chair at the head of the table. "I'm sure you all know who I am by now. And I'm sure you've all seen the news, read the analysis. Talk to your lawyers about whether there's any way to stop this." One of the older board members, a man with white hair and a sharp suit, cleared his throat. "Mr. Johnson, with all due respect, you may own the majority of shares, but running an airline is incredibly complex. It requires years of experience, deep industry knowledge. It requires treating people with respect." I interrupted. "That's all. Everything else, the logistics, the operations, the finance, I can hire people for that. I can learn that. But the basic concept of human decency, that should have already been here." A woman at the far end spoke up. "We've had diversity training. We have policies in place. What happened to you was an isolated incident." "No, it wasn't." I pulled out a folder and dropped on the table. "I had my team do some research last night. In the past 3 years, Transglobal has been sued 17 times for discrimination. 17 times. And those are just the cases that went to court. How many people just accepted it and moved on? How many people couldn't afford lawyers or didn't want the stress of fighting?" The room was silent. "Here's what's going to happen," I continued. "We're going to settle every one of those cases, fairly and generously. We're going to issue public apologies. We're going to implement real changes, not just training that people sit through and forget." The CFO spoke up, a thin man with glasses. "Mr. Johnson, the cost of settling all those cases, plus implementing new training, plus the operational changes you're suggesting, we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. The company can't sustain. The stock is up 78% since I bought in," I said. "The market value of this company has increased by nearly $3 billion in 24 hours. Know why? Because investors believe in change. They believe in a company that actually cares about its customers. So yes, we can afford it." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out over the city below. "I didn't buy this airline to make money," I said quietly. "I mean, I will make money. I'm good at that. But that's not why I'm here. I'm here because yesterday I was humiliated. I had treated like a criminal, accept it and move on, in that moment, or do something about it. I turned back to face them. I chose to do something. And now, all of you have a choice too. You can work with me to make this airline better, or you can fight me and lose. Because I promise you, I have more money, more patience, and more determination than you can imagine. So what's it going to be?" The white-haired man who'd spoken first sighed and leaned back in his chair. "What exactly do you want us to do?" "I want you to help me revolutionize this industry," I said, "starting today." The meeting lasted 4 hours. We talked about new policies, new training programs, new hiring practices. We talked about compensation for victims of discrimination. We talked about transparency and accountability. And slowly, I watched them shift from defensive to curious to actually engaged. These weren't bad people. They were just people who'd gotten comfortable with the status quo, who'd stopped questioning whether things could be better. Now, they were questioning everything. By the time we finished, we had a plan. A real concrete, actionable plan to transform Transglobal Airways from the inside out. As the board members filed out, the white-haired man stopped by my chair. "Mr. Johnson, I owe you an apology. When I heard how you'd acquired the company, I thought you were just an angry man looking for revenge. But I see now you're trying to build something. I'm trying to fix something that's been broken for too long," I said. "Will you help me?" He extended his hand. "Yes, I will." We shook and I felt something shift. This wasn't just about me anymore. It wasn't just about what happened on that plane. It was about creating a world where what happened to me couldn't happen to anyone else. 3 weeks later, I sat in a chair before the House Transportation Committee. Cameras surrounded me. The room was packed with reporters, activists, airline employees, and people who'd experienced discrimination just like I had. Congresswoman Hayes leaned forward and spoke into her microphone. "Mr. Johnson, thank you for being here today. Can you tell us, in your own words, what happened on October 15th? I took a breath and began to speak. I told them everything. The security guard's hand on my arm, the false accusation, the faces of passengers who assumed I was guilty, the humiliation of being removed from the plane I'd paid to be on. But I also told them what happened next. I told them about the decision I made, about buying the airline, about using my resources to create change instead of just complaining about injustice. Some people say I was lucky. I said, looking directly at the cameras, that the market crash happened at just the right time. And they're right, I was lucky, but I was also prepared. I'd spent years building wealth so that when moments like this came, I could act. I paused, choosing my next words carefully. Every day, people of color face discrimination. In stores, in schools, in airports, in workplaces. Most of them can't buy companies to fight back. Most of them don't have the resources I have. But they deserve justice just as much as I do. So what do we do about it? Congresswoman Hayes asked, "How do we create systemic change?" "We make it expensive to discriminate," I said. "Right now it's cheap. A company gets sued, they settle quietly, nothing changes. But what if discrimination costs companies billions? What if every time they made a racist assumption, their stock price crashed? What if consumers refuse to support businesses that treat people unfairly?" I leaned forward. Money talks. If we want real change, we need to make discrimination unprofitable. We need to reward companies that do the right thing and punish companies that don't. Not just with fines, with our wallets, our choices, our collective power as consumers. The committee room erupted in applause, not just from the audience, but from some of the congresspeople themselves. After my testimony, I walked out into the hallway. A crowd of people was waiting, journalists, activists, and dozens of ordinary people who just wanted to shake my hand. But one person caught my attention. A teenage boy, maybe 16, with dark skin and nervous eyes. He held out a piece of paper. "Mr. Johnson, could you sign this? You're my hero." I took the paper and pen, but before I signed, I asked him, "What's your name?" "Darius," he said quietly. "Darius, let me tell you something. I'm not a hero. I'm just a man who got angry and had the resources to do something about it. But you know what? You can be a hero too. You don't need $1 billion. You just need courage, preparation, and the willingness to stand up when something's wrong." His eyes widened. "But I'm just a kid. I don't have money or power or... Neither did I once. I grew up poor, Darius. Really poor, but I studied hard. I saved every penny. I learned how money works, how markets work, how power works. And when my moment came, I was ready. I signed the paper and handed it back to him. "Your moment is coming too," I said. "Be ready for it." 6 months later, Transglobal Airways was unrecognizable. We'd settled all the discrimination lawsuits, fairly and generously. We'd implemented comprehensive bias training for every employee, from pilots to gate agents. We'd hired a diverse leadership team that actually reflected the passengers we served. We'd created an independent board to review discrimination complaints and had given them real power to make changes. And our customer satisfaction scores had skyrocketed. Turns out, when you treat people with respect, they want to fly with you. Our bookings were up 40%. Our stock had doubled since I bought in. We'd become the most profitable airline in America, not despite our focus on equality, but because of it. Other airlines were scrambling to copy what we'd done. The whole industry was changing, slowly but surely. I was in my office, my new office, on the top floor Transglobal headquarters, when Marcus walked in with a tablet. "Boss, you need to see this." He showed me a video. It was from an airport in Texas. A young black woman was boarding a plane in first class. A flight attendant approached her, and I tensed, worried about what would come next. But the flight attendant just smiled and said, "Welcome aboard, ma'am. Can I get you something to drink before we take off?" The woman looked shocked for a moment, like she'd been expecting trouble. Then she smiled back and said, "Champagne would be lovely, thank you." It was a small moment, a normal moment, the kind of moment that should happen every day, but often doesn't. I watched the video 3 times, feeling something warm spread through my chest. "We did that," Marcus said quietly. 6 months ago, that interaction might have gone differently. But because of what you did, because of the changes we made, that woman got aboard her flight with dignity. I nodded, unable to speak for a moment. "You know what the best part is?" Marcus continued. "She has no idea. She doesn't know your name or what happened to you or how you bought this airline. She just knows she was treated with respect. That's what success looks like." He was right. True change wasn't about recognition or praise. It was about making the world a little bit better, one interaction at a time. My phone buzzed. A text from Darius, the teenager I'd met at Congress. Darius: "Mr. Johnson, I just got accepted to business school. Full scholarship. I'm going to study finance. Just like you. One day, I'm going to change the world too." I smiled and texted back, "You already are, Darius. You already are." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. Somewhere out there, people were boarding planes. Some were being treated well. Some were probably being discriminated against. The fight wasn't over. It would never be completely over. But it was better than it was 6 months ago. And 6 months from now, it would be better still. I thought back to that moment on the plane, the security guard's hand on my arm, the assumption that I didn't belong, the humiliation and anger and helplessness. That moment had changed my life. But more importantly, it had changed thousands of other lives too. All the people who would board planes and be treated with dignity because I'd chosen to fight back instead of accepting injustice. Was it worth it? Was buying an airline in 15 minutes crazy? Maybe. Probably. But sometimes the crazy thing is exactly the right thing. My desk phone rang. It was Jennifer, my director of passenger experience. "Mr. Johnson, we just got another complaint. A passenger says she was racially profiled at the gate in Atlanta." 6 months ago, that call would have filled me with rage. Now it filled me with purpose. "Send me the details," I said. "Let's figure out what happened and fix it." "Already on it, boss." We're interviewing everyone involved, reviewing the footage, and the passengers being upgraded to first class with a formal apology. "Good. And Jennifer?" "Yes." "Thank you. For everything you do." "No," she said softly. "Thank you. For giving me a chance to be part of something that matters." I hung up and looked around my office. On the wall was a framed photo, not of me, but of that empty seat on the plane. Seat 2A, the seat I'd been pulled from. I kept it there as a reminder of where I came from, a reminder of why this mattered, a reminder that every seat on every plane should be open to everyone, regardless of what they look like. The sun was setting outside my window, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new problems to solve, new battles to fight. But tonight, I allowed myself a moment of satisfaction. I'd been pulled from first class. 15 minutes later, I bought the airline, and I'd spent every moment since making sure no one else would have to go through what I did. That wasn't revenge. That was justice. And we were just getting started.